The massive halls of the Galactic Council stretched far above Tom's head as he walked toward the meeting chamber. 5 years had passed since humanity's first contact, but he still felt a sense of wonder every time he entered this place. The white marble-like walls glowed with a soft light, and the ceiling displayed a real-time map of the known galaxy. Sometimes he had to remind himself that this was real, that humanity had finally joined the stars. Tom adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform and checked his tablet one last time. Earth's military spending reports were due today, and he knew what was coming. The same questions, the same concerns, the same bewildered looks from the other council members. Humans just couldn't help themselves. They always prepared for the worst. The chamber doors slid open with a gentle hiss. Around the circular table sat representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Tom still struggled to read their expressions. The head counselor, a tall being with silvery skin named Light of Reason, nodded at Tom's arrival. "Representative of Earth, please take your seat," Light of Reason said in the common galactic language. "We have much to discuss today." Tom sat down, noticing the slight shifting of several alien representatives. They always got nervous when humans were around. Maybe it was because Earth spent more on defense than the next 5 council races combined. Or maybe it was the way humans had reacted to first contact, by immediately building planetary shield generators just in case. The meeting started with routine matters: trade routes, diplomatic missions, scientific exchanges. Tom was just beginning to relax when the chamber's main display lit up with urgent news. A probe had detected predatory activity in the Spiral Arm's outer regions. "We have confirmed reports," Light of Reason announced, "that the species known as the Hunters have been observed near the developing civilization in the PS-1138 system. Our protocols suggest minimal observation and non-intervention." Tom sat up straight. The Hunters were infamous, a spacefaring race that preyed on developing civilizations, stealing their resources and sometimes enslaving their people. The Council's usual response was to document their activities and offer aid to survivors afterward. "What level of development has PS-1138 reached?" Tom asked, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the chamber. "Early industrial," replied another counselor, a bird-like being. "They have just discovered powered flight. By our estimates, they are at least 3 centuries from achieving space travel." Tom stood up slowly, his chair sliding back. The other representatives grew quiet. They had learned that when humans stood up like this, something big was coming. "Earth proposes immediate protective intervention," Tom said firmly. "We request emergency powers to establish a full defensive grid around PS-1138. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Light of Reason raised all 4 hands for silence. "Representative of Earth, the protocols for non-spacefaring civilizations are clear. We cannot interfere with their natural development." Tom smiled, the kind of smile that made alien diplomats nervous. "The protocols also have a clause for protecting developing species from external threats. Earth is invoking Article 7, Subsection 23, Emergency Protection of Pre-Spacefaring Civilizations." "But that article has never been used," stammered one of the reptilian counselors. "It was written as a theoretical framework." "Then it's about time someone used it," Tom replied, pulling up detailed plans on the main display. The other representatives gasped as page after page of defensive systems, patrol routes, and protection protocols filled the screen. Earth had prepared for this possibility years ago. "This is excessive," Light of Reason said slowly. "The resources required, the scale of intervention. Earth believes that when you protect something, you protect it properly," Tom stated, his voice firm. "We've seen enough of our own history to know what happens when you don't commit fully to defending those who can't defend themselves." The chamber fell silent as the aliens studied the human plans. Multiple layers of defensive satellites, automated response systems, hidden fleet bases, and even a planetary shield generator. It was more protection than most council races provided for their own colonies. "You had this planned already?" asked the bird-like counselor, eyes wide with surprise. "Of course," Tom replied with a slight shrug. "We have similar plans ready for every developing civilization within reach of our ships. It's just good sense to be prepared." The other representatives exchanged looks of disbelief. They were starting to understand why humans had such a reputation for overthinking defense, but none of them could have guessed that this was just the beginning, that this moment would change how the entire galaxy thought about protecting the weak. As the Council began to debate the details, Tom sent a quick message back to Earth. "They're going to approve it. Prepare Phase 1. The response came almost instantly. Fleet already standing by. 3 days after the Council meeting, Admiral Mary stood before the gathered alien representatives in the Grand Presentation Hall. Behind her, a massive hologram showed the PS-1138 system in perfect detail. She had fought in Earth's space forces for 20 years, but this moment made her more nervous than any battle. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of all forms," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm here to present Earth's comprehensive protection plan for the PS-1138 civilization." The aliens watched with interest. Some used translation devices, others had natural abilities to understand any language. All of them were about to learn what humans meant by thorough protection. "We'll start with the outer system defense grid," Mary said, zooming the hologram out to show the entire star system. 3 rings of automated defense platforms, each capable of running independently for 50 years without resupply. A reptilian counselor raised a hand. "Excuse me, Admiral, but did you say 3 rings? Surely 1 would be sufficient." Mary smiled. It was the kind of smile that made military commanders on Earth nervous. 1 ring would work, yes. 2 would be safer. 3 means we sleep better at night. The hologram changed to show details of the defense platforms. Each platform carries enough firepower to destroy a medium-sized warship. They're also equipped with stealth technology, sensor arrays, and emergency response drones. "The cost must be astronomical," muttered one of the bird-like beings. "Can't put a price on protecting innocent lives," Mary replied simply, then moved on before they could argue. Now for the inner system defenses. The next hour left the alien representatives increasingly stunned. Mary detailed layer after layer of defensive systems, automated patrol ships, planetary shield generators hidden under the oceans, high-orbit weapon platforms disguised as small moons, early warning systems buried in asteroid belts, emergency evacuation plans for the entire planet's population. "Wait," interrupted Light of Reason, standing up. "You plan to build evacuation ships for a species that hasn't even reached spaceflight?" "Of course," Mary nodded. "We hope we'll never need them. But if we do and don't have them..." She let the sentence hang. Every human in the room nodded in understanding, while the aliens looked bewildered. A blue-skinned diplomat spoke up. "But how will you hide all this from the developing civilization? Our studies show they've already begun astronomical observations." Mary's grin widened. "That's the clever part. We've designed everything to look natural from their perspective. The defense platforms use adaptive camouflage. The patrol routes avoid their telescopes. Even the shield generator's energy signatures match natural geological patterns." She brought up another detailed diagram. "We've also prepared a cultural protection program. If they do detect anything, we have teams ready to prevent panic and protect their natural development. We've studied every radio signal, every cultural broadcast they've made. We understand their myths, their stories, their ways of thinking." The alien representatives whispered among themselves. This went far beyond anything they had expected. This wasn't just military protection. It was comprehensive societal preservation. "And what if the hunters never attack?" asked one of the older counselors. "All this preparation, all these resources, for nothing." "Then we'll have the best kind of defense system," Mary replied. "One that worked so well it never had to be used." She moved to her final slides. "We've also prepared contingency plans for 57 different scenarios, ranging from simple probe incursions to full-scale invasion attempts. Each plan has at least 3 backup strategies, and each backup has its own backup. The room had grown very quiet. The aliens were beginning to understand something about humans that they hadn't quite grasped before. It wasn't just that humans were protective. They were methodically, systematically, almost obsessively protective. "One last thing," Mary added, almost casually. "All of this, it's just phase 1. We have 4 more phases ready if needed." Light of Reason sank slowly back into his seat. "By the eternal stars," he whispered, "what are the other phases like?" Mary's expression turned serious. "Let's hope we never have to show you. But if we do need them, you'll understand why Earth's history books are full of times when people said, 'If only we had prepared more.'" As the presentation ended, the alien representatives filed out in stunned silence. One of them was overheard saying to another, "Now I understand why their own history has so many stories about guardian angels. They don't just want to protect. They want to protect perfectly." Captain Jack stood at the command center of Defense Station Alpha, watching the holographic display of the PS-1138 system. The first wave of defensive systems had been deployed in record time, thanks to the pre-planned modules Earth had kept ready. He took a sip of coffee and studied the incoming sensor data. "Sir," called out his sensor officer, "we're picking up unusual energy signatures at the system's edge. Pattern matches known Hunter scout vessels." Jack didn't even look surprised. The Hunters were right on schedule. Earth's behavioral analysis had predicted they would test the defenses within the first month. "How many ships?" 3 small vessels, sir. They're being careful, staying just at the edge of our outer sensor range." Jack smiled. The Hunters thought they were at the edge of sensor range, but that was just what Earth wanted them to think. The real sensors reached twice as far. Another layer of deception in the endless layers of protection. "Maintain passive tracking," Jack ordered. "Let's see what they do when they think we can't see them." The command center hummed with quiet activity. Humans and a few alien allies worked at their stations, monitoring every aspect of the defensive grid. The aliens had been shocked at first by the level of redundancy in the systems. Every station had backups, and those backups had backups. Even the coffee maker had a backup. "Sir, the Hunter vessels are launching probes," reported another officer. "Small, stealthy models. They're heading toward the outer defense ring." Jack nodded. "Right into our test zone." "Perfect." He opened a channel to Earth Command. "Phase 1. Stage 3 has begun. Hunter probes are entering the containment area exactly as predicted. The probes move slowly through space, their stealth systems no match for Earth's advanced sensors. They passed through the first layer of defenses, their sensors detecting nothing because that's exactly what Earth wanted them to detect. The second layer remained equally invisible to them. "They're approaching the third ring," announced the sensor officer. "Should we activate the warning system?" "Not yet," Jack replied. "Let them get a little closer. Let them think they're being clever." On the main display, the Hunter probes continued their careful approach. They had no idea they'd already triggered 7 different layers of sensors, and 2 automated response systems were tracking their every move. The humans watched patiently, letting the Hunters think they were succeeding in their stealth mission. "Sir," called out the communication officer, "we're receiving a priority message from the Council observation team. They're requesting permission to witness our defensive protocols in action." Jack grinned. "Grant them access to observation level 2. Let's show them how Earth handles unwanted visitors." The probes crossed an invisible line, and Jack gave the order. "Initiate Protocol 7 Alpha. Let's give them something to think about." Instantly, a small section of the defensive grid flickered into visibility, just enough to make the Hunter probes think they'd accidentally stumbled upon it. The probes froze, then began to retreat exactly as Earth's behavioral analysts had predicted. "They're launching emergency transmission bursts," reported the sensor officer, "sending warning signals back to their main ships." "Perfect," Jack said. "They'll report finding exactly what we wanted them to find." A simple, standard defensive screen that any civilization might deploy. He turned to his crew. And they'll have no idea about the other 6 layers they passed through, or the 12 more waiting if they try to push further. The alien observers watched in amazement as the humans systematically logged every detail of the encounter. Each probe's movement was analyzed, each transmission decoded and stored. The humans treated this simple scout mission like it was a full military engagement. "Your people are very thorough," commented one of the alien observers. "All this for a simple probe intrusion." Jack turned to the alien with a serious expression. "On Earth, we have a saying. The best time to stop an invasion is before it starts. Every piece of data we gather now might save lives later." As the hunter probes retreated, Jack's team was already updating their defense protocols. New sensor arrays were being deployed, additional backup systems were being activated, and more layers of protection were being added. The aliens watched in bewilderment as humans treated each small security update like it was crucial to the survival of the species they were protecting. "Isn't this a bit excessive?" asked another alien observer. "The hunters only sent 3 probes. Today it's 3 probes," Jack replied. "Tomorrow it might be something else. And when that something else comes, we'll be ready. And then we'll be ready for the thing after that too." The hunter vessels eventually withdrew from the system's edge, probably feeling satisfied with their stealth reconnaissance. They had no idea they'd just participated in exactly the scenario Earth had prepared for. As Jack filed his report, he couldn't help but smile. The hunters thought they were being clever, but they were about to learn what happened when you challenged humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent. The alert sirens blared through Defense Station Alpha exactly 2 weeks after the probe incident. Jack sprinted to the command center, his morning coffee forgotten in the break room. The hunters had finally made their first real move. "Status report," he called out as he entered the command center. The room was already fully staffed, every station manned and ready. 30 hunter vessels detected, sir," reported the sensor officer. "Much larger than the scout ships. They're moving in attack formation, but staying outside our visible defense perimeter." Jack took his command position, quickly reviewing the tactical displays. The hunter fleet was impressive, to anyone except a human. Earth had planned for fleets 5 times this size. "They're launching something," called out another officer. "Multiple signatures, reading as electronic warfare platforms. They're trying to blind our sensors." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Activate countermeasure protocol, Echo 7. Let's show them what real electronic warfare looks like." The defensive grid hummed to life, not just the visible outer layer that the hunters knew about, but all 7 layers simultaneously. Each layer had its own electronic warfare suite, its own countermeasures, and its own surprises. The alien observers in the command center watched in astonishment as screens lit up with defensive system after defensive system. What had appeared to be a simple planetary defense grid was revealing itself to be something far more complex. "Sir, the hunter platforms are experiencing confusion," reported the electronic warfare specialist, trying not to laugh. "Their systems are detecting 7 different defense grids, each giving contradictory readings. They can't tell which is real." "That's because they all are," Jack replied. He opened a channel to Admiral Mary's command ship, which had quietly slipped into position behind the hunter fleet. "Admiral, they've taken the bait. The electronic warfare dance has begun." The hunter fleet paused, clearly trying to make sense of the sensor data they were receiving. Their electronic warfare platforms were broadcasting confusion signals, trying to find weaknesses in the defense grid. Instead, they were getting data about multiple overlapping fields, each operating on different principles. "They're launching physical probes now," reported the sensor officer. "Looks like they're trying to verify their sensor readings the old-fashioned way." "Perfect," Jack said. "Initiate protocol Maze Runner. Let's give those probes something interesting to report back." The defense grid shifted subtly. Automated systems created false sensor readings. Holographic projectors made solid objects appear meters from their actual positions. Electromagnetic fields scrambled navigation systems. The hunter probes found themselves in a hall of mirrors where nothing was quite what it seemed. "Sir," called out the communication officer, "we're picking up significant chatter from the hunter fleet. They seem frustrated." The alien observers exchanged glances. They had never seen the hunters hesitate like this. The predatory species was known for swift, decisive attacks. But now they faced something they didn't understand, a defense that seemed to break the rules of what was possible. "Sir, they're preparing their main weapons," reported Tactical, "reading energy buildups in their forward batteries." "Right on schedule," Jack nodded. "Admiral Mary, they're about to test our shields. Would you like to show them why that's a bad idea?" The Admiral's voice came through clear and confident. "With pleasure, Captain. All ships, execute pattern break. Let's give them something new to think about." The Hunter fleet fired their first volley, and that's when they learned about layers 8 and 9 of the defense grid. Their weapons fire disappeared into quantum sync fields, was redirected by gravity lenses, or simply stopped existing as it hit fields of exotic matter. "Their weapons had no effect, sir," reported Tactical, the excitement clear in their voice. "Their sensors are going crazy trying to figure out what happened." The alien observers stared in shock. One of them finally spoke up. Did your defense grid just eat their weapons fire?" "Among other things," Jack replied casually. "Would you like to see what happens when we fire back?" But the hunters didn't wait to find out. Their fleet was already turning, retreating in what could only be described as confusion. They had come expecting to find a simple planetary defense system. Instead, they had found something that defied their understanding of what was possible. As the hunter fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Jack turned to his crew. "Good work, everyone. Update the defensive protocols with everything we learned. Next time they come, we'll have even more surprises waiting." The alien observers looked at each other, then at Jack. One of them finally asked the question they were all thinking. "Next time, you think they'll come back after this?" "Of course they will," Jack replied. "And we'll be ready. Because the thing about human protection, we're always ready for more." The hunters returned 3 days later with a fleet that made their previous force look like a scouting party. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel simultaneously, their weapons already charged. This time, they weren't here to test defenses. They were here to break them. Admiral Mary watched from her command ship, hidden behind a quantum cloak that the hunters hadn't even imagined possible. "All stations, sound battle stations. This is not a drill. Execute Defense Plan Omega." Across the system, human ships and stations came alive. Hidden bases activated beneath the ice of distant moons. Stealth platforms emerged from their hiding spots in asteroid fields. The entire system seemed to wake up, revealing defenses that had been invisible moments before. "They're broadcasting a demand for surrender," reported the communications officer. "They're saying their fleet is unstoppable." Mary allowed herself a small chuckle. "Send them our standard response." The response was simple. Every defensive system in the entire system activated simultaneously. Shields shimmered into existence, not in layers but in complex geometric patterns that overlapped and reinforced each other. Weapon platforms revealed themselves by the hundreds, then thousands. The hunter fleet paused. This was not what they had expected, even after their last encounter. "They're launching their first wave," Tactical reported. 5,000 fighter craft, backed by heavy weapon platforms. "Perfect," Mary replied. "Execute Protocol Thunderstorm." The space around the hunter fleet erupted in a display of defensive technology that would have made Earth's greatest scientists proud. Quantum fields redirected fighter craft into empty space. Gravity wells appeared from nowhere, trapping entire squadrons. Electromagnetic pulses disabled fighter after fighter. On the protected planet below, the primitive civilization looked up at their night sky in wonder. What they saw looked like a dance of new stars, the careful result of human light-filtering technology that turned a massive space battle into a harmless light show. Hunter capital ships are moving into attack formation, Tactical announced. They're charging their main guns. Time to show them why you don't test human defenses, Mary said calmly. Execute Protocol Mountain. The hunters fired their main weapons, planet-killing beams of energy that could crack worlds. They hit the first layer of shields, which absorbed the energy. Then the second layer, which redirected it. By the third layer, the hunter commanders were starting to realize something was very wrong. Their weapons had zero effect on our defensive grid, reported the shield control officer, not even trying to hide his grin. All 7 primary layers are holding at full strength. The backup layers weren't even touched. The alien observers on Mary's bridge watched in stunned silence. One of them finally spoke up. You have backup layers for your backup layers. Of course, Mary replied, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Now let's show them what happens when you threaten someone under human protection. She gave the order, and the defensive grid transformed from a shield into a weapon. Every absorbed energy blast was redirected back at the hunter fleet, but with a twist. Each shot came from a different angle, at a different time, with different energy signatures. The hunter fleet's formation broke. Ships scattered in confusion as their own weapons fire seemed to come at them from everywhere at once. Their electronic warfare systems were useless against defenses that operated on principles they didn't understand. Hunter fleet is showing signs of panic, Tactical reported with satisfaction. Their formation is breaking down. Multiple ships are attempting emergency faster than light jumps. Now they're learning. Mary nodded. Signal the hidden fleet. Time for Phase 2. The hunter commanders probably thought things couldn't get worse. They were wrong. From behind every moon, every asteroid field, and every seemingly empty patch of space, human ships appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. Each one had been waiting silently, watching, ready for this moment. They're retreating, announced Tactical. Full withdrawal across all sectors. The alien observers looked at the tactical display in shock. The mighty hunter fleet was running away, their perfect formation shattered, their unstoppable weapons proven useless against human engineering. Should we pursue? Asked Mary's second in command. No need, she replied. They've learned their first lesson about human protection. Let them go share that lesson with others. As the hunter fleet fled into faster-than-light travel, Mary turned to the alien observers. And that, gentlemen, was just our standard response. Would you like to know what our emergency protocols look like? The observers quickly shook their heads. They had seen enough to understand. When humans promised protection, they meant absolute, overwhelming, completely excessive protection, and they wouldn't have it any other way. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. News of the battle had spread quickly, and representatives from every spacefaring race had come to hear Earth's report. Tom stood at the center, with Admiral Mary and Captain Jack flanking him. The hunter fleet has retreated beyond the outer rim, Tom announced. Their losses were significant. More importantly, they now understand the cost of attacking the human-protected world. Light of Reason leaned forward in his chair. We have reviewed the battle footage. Your defensive capabilities. They exceeded anything we thought possible. How long have you been preparing these technologies? Since the day we joined the Council, Tom replied simply. Actually, since before that. Humanity has always believed in being ready for anything. The chamber's main display activated, showing detailed scans of the defensive systems. The alien representatives watched in amazement as layer after layer of protection was revealed. Many of them had thought the initial defense proposals were excessive. Now they realized those had just been the visible tip of a much larger iceberg. But the cost, one of the reptilian counselors protested. The resources needed for such extensive defenses must be astronomical. How can you justify such expenditure for a species that doesn't even know you exist? Mary stepped forward. On Earth, we have a concept called deterrence. The best defense isn't just about stopping attacks. It's about making sure they never happen in the first place. When we protect something, we make sure everyone knows attacking it would be a very, very bad idea. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several representatives were already drafting requests for human protection agreements. Others were studying the battle data, trying to understand how their own defenses could be improved. "There's something else you should know," Jack added, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Everything you saw in that battle. That was just our standard response. We still had 13 layers of backup defenses we didn't need to use." The room fell silent. The aliens stared at the humans with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Finally, one of the older counselors spoke up. "In all my years, I've never understood why humans spent so much on defense, why you always prepared for the worst possible scenario. But now I see. You don't just protect. You make protection absolute." Tom nodded. "During our history on Earth, we learned hard lessons about what happens when you're not prepared enough, when you don't take threats seriously enough. We decided that would never happen again." The display changed to show the protected planet. Its people continued their lives, completely unaware of the massive battle that had happened in their sky. The human light-filtering technology had turned weapon fire and explosions into nothing more than an interesting stellar phenomenon. "They will never know how close they came to destruction," Mary said softly. "They'll never know about the fleet that came to end them, or the defenses that saved them. And that's exactly how it should be. They deserve to develop at their own pace, free from fear." A bird-like representative raised a wing. "What if they develop spaceflight and find your defensive grid?" "We've planned for that too," Jack replied. "Every piece of technology is designed to look natural from their perspective. If they reach space, they'll find what looks like an ordinary solar system. The defenses will simply relocate, always there, always watching, but never interfering." The council members exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand something fundamental about humans. Their protective instincts weren't just strong, they were comprehensive. Humans didn't just think about the immediate threat. They thought about every possible threat, and then prepared for things even worse than that. "We would like to formally request human assistance in upgrading our own defensive systems," Light of Reason announced. "It seems we have much to learn about true protection." Tom smiled. "We'd be happy to help. In fact, we already have plans drawn up for each of your systems. We created them the day we joined the council, just in case." As the meeting continued, more and more representatives came forward with requests for protection agreements and defensive assistance. The humans had changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to protect something. It wasn't just about having enough defenses to win. It was about having so many defenses that no one would dare to attack in the first place. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a hunter fleet limped home, carrying with them a simple message. Some things in this galaxy were simply too well protected to touch, and if those protectors were human, it was best to turn around and never look back. 1 year after the Hunter incident, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Tom stood at his usual place in the council chamber, but this time he wasn't defending Earth's excessive protection measures. Instead, he was reviewing the success of what had become known as the Human Protection Standard. In the past year, not a single developing civilization under human protection has faced any external threats, he reported. The mere presence of our defense systems has prevented 17 potential conflicts and deterred 234 probe attempts. The chamber, once skeptical of human methods, now nodded in approval. Many of them had adopted similar protective measures for their own worlds. Earth's defense contractors had been busy helping install scaled-down versions of their systems across the galaxy. Admiral Mary stepped forward to present the next set of statistics. The hunter fleet we encountered has spread word throughout their territory. They've completely ceased their predatory activities, not because we destroyed them, but because we showed them something they'd never seen before, a defense that made attack pointless. The main display showed a map of the galaxy, with green dots indicating protected worlds. What had started as a single point had spread into a network of safeguarded civilizations, each protected by layers upon layers of human-designed defenses. But the most interesting development, Captain Jack added, stepping up to the podium, has been the cultural impact. The species we protected. They're developing faster than expected, but not because they detected our defenses. They're growing because they feel safe, even if they don't know why. The display shifted to show the progress of the civilization they had first protected. Their technological advancement had accelerated, their arts had flourished, and their society had grown more cooperative. All because, on some subconscious level, they felt secure. We've also noticed something fascinating, Tom continued. Other civilizations are starting to copy our methods, not just our technology, but our philosophy. The idea that when you protect something, you protect it completely. Light of Reason stood up. I must admit, we once thought humans were paranoid, excessive, but now we understand. You weren't excessive, you were thorough. And thoroughness in protection saves lives. The Council had recently passed what they called the human minimum, a set of defensive standards that required at least 3 layers of protection for any developing civilization. For humans, this was laughably insufficient, but it was a start. We've received requests from 27 more civilizations for protection agreements, Mary reported. We've already completed plans for each of them, including backup plans for their backup plans. An alien representative raised his hand. But surely now, with the hunters contained and the galaxy becoming safer, we can scale back some of these defenses. The humans in the room shared a knowing look. Tom stepped forward to answer. Actually, we're adding more, he said, because there might be threats we haven't met yet, dangers we haven't imagined. And when they come, we want to be ready. The chamber fell quiet as they absorbed this. The aliens were learning that human protection wasn't just a response to threats. It was a way of thinking. A philosophy that said being too prepared was better than being not prepared enough. We've started work on what we call the Galactic Shield Network, Jack announced, a connected system of defensive grids that can protect not just individual worlds, but entire sectors of space. Because why stop at protecting one world when you can protect them all? The display showed the ambitious project, a vast network of interconnected defense systems that would eventually cover every developing civilization in the galaxy. It was the kind of project only humans would think of, and only humans would actually try to build. Some call it excessive, Tom concluded. We call it thorough, because in all of Earth's history, no one ever looked back and said we were too prepared. But many looked back and wished they had been prepared more. As the session ended, the alien representatives filed out, talking excitedly about the future. The galaxy was becoming a safer place, not through force, but through the simple human principle of being so well defended that force became pointless. In orbit around a distant planet, a young species looked up at their night sky. They saw stars and wondered about their place in the universe. They didn't see the layers of defenses protecting them, the fleet standing guard, or the countless backup systems ready to activate at a moment's notice. They didn't know about the humans watching over them, or the new galactic order that ensured their safety. And that, as every human knew, was exactly how protection should work. Not seen, not known, but always there, always ready, always thorough. Because humans had learned long ago, when you protect something, you protect it right.